Hello and welcome back to Genesis Designs and Modelcraft. And here at the bench today I have another quick look review, and this time what we have is hot off the press, the brand new Eduard Rufe. So this is, as I'm sure many of you are perfectly well aware, the seaplane version of the Zero Fighter. Float plane, seaplane, however you want to put it. And this is the initial dual combo release, and these are kind of spendy. I think dual combos in the past have been to some extent slightly better value for money maybe than solo Profi packs, but I'm not convinced that the same is true right now. This one, I got this from the lovely Vince at modelsforsale.com. And the Rufe one is $59.98, so that equates to £30 per kit. So whether you think that's great value or not is probably up to you. I think Profi packs can be had for slightly less than that in their solitary form. Alright, I've looked it up. So solo Profi pack zeros, there is no such thing as a Profi pack solo Rufe yet. You can buy in the UK for around about the £27 to £30 mark, and I believe retail is about £33. So at $59.98 for two, it's a minimal saving. But anyway, I think if you want Eduard kits at their best, this is very much a personal opinion, but it is based on what I see with my eyes and the kits that I have. I think if you want the best from Eduard kits, you need to get them while they're fresh, as it were. Well, the tools are fresh anyway. So I'm sort of willing to suck up that little bit of a price gouge on that basis, and I'm not having a go at Eduard, because in fairness I think 30 odd quid for a kit of the standard of the ones that they're putting out these days is reasonably fair. Anyway, enough waffling, woman, as ever. Let's have a look what you get in here. So as I say, dual combo, nominally limited edition, and they actually are, to be fair. They tend to be a case of once they're gone, they're gone. And when you open the box, there's a lot of space around there, but it is quite deeply filled. And they have packed these sprues in sort of double packs. It's not a case of two separate kits being popped in here. These are all doubled up. So let's get the box out of the way and knock everything over, and we'll have a look through these bags at the plastic parts. In fact, we'll start with the other ones. What would it be? What would a Genesis review be without a whole load of bag rattling, huh? So we'll start with the bits that a lot of you have probably seen before, for the Zero parts. I haven't seen this kit before in any form, so it's all new to me. So here we have two of sprue G. And as we can quite clearly see, this is the fuselage parts. There is what I assume is some kind of engine mount piece here. Cowling parts, fuselage tail planes. Quite simply done. So, initial thoughts. I'll just put my scientist specs on so I can see what I'm doing. It's absolutely everything you expect from Eduard these days. Looking closely, we've got tiny raised details. We've got raised fasteners on these fairings here at the tail plane, raised panels, overlapping panels represented, and then this beautifully fine recessed rivet representation. Absolutely gorgeous. There are even sort of little fairing edges around those openings at the front. I'll come up a little closer, remembering to hold it still for you. I don't know if you can see the little raised portions along there. I'm not sure if that's flash or if it's meant to be there, but it isn't present on this one, so it's probably a touch of flash. It's just extraordinarily nice. Internally, not too much going on, but we've come to expect that you get sort of separate panels for the inside of models from Eduard nowadays. Beautifully machined. It's all absolutely lovely. And this is why I mentioned, and I'll get it out of the way now while I remember, this is why I mentioned that if you want the best from an Eduard kit, you need to jump on them while the tools are fresh, because I did somewhat recently, and I believe I might have reviewed it on the channel, buy a weekend edition of the 172nd Spitfire 9, which is a kit that I built back when it was initially released, and I think it was featured in Airfixed Model World magazine. And when I built it, it was stunning and beautiful and lovely, and I encountered no issues with anything at all. But the new version that I have, it's clearly the exact same kit, just different markings and whatnot. It does have flash present in lots of places, and more annoyingly than that, because flash is no big deal in all honesty, is the mould misalignment. You know, the small parts, the mould seams on them are massive, because the moulds themselves seem slightly misaligned. I don't know if that's due to wear or if I just got a Friday one, but it does remove quite a lot from the build experience, and I actually might do a little book of Genesis on parts prep and test fitting, because I'm having to do some on it. Anyway, enough said. That's just a personal observation. You may or may not agree, but if you get them when they're fresh, they just don't seem to suffer from those issues. So. Alright, the next one. Some rings. We've got two in here, two sprues in here. Two of sprue L, Lima. Now these are clearly going to be different, oh, someone's hair there, than the land-based Zero, because look, no wheels. But also just look at the finesse of that surface detail. It's absolutely stunning. Really, truly beautiful. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the concept, or conceptually if you like, with the depiction of flush riveting as tiny dimples on the surface, because flush rivets are not tiny dimples. As the name suggests, they are in fact flush. Oftentimes when they're done well, because they're not always done well even on real aircraft, you can't really see them at all underneath the paint, and when you can, it's really just a sort of a circle around the edge of the rivet. So representing them on a plastic kit as a sort of small hole in the surface, to me, is just inherently wrong. However, it does provide a level of complication to the appearance of the surface of the model, which gives it an air of authenticity. I get that, and I don't disapprove of that. So it's kind of one of them where I sort of straddle the fence a little bit, if you'll excuse the terminology. You know, it works both ways really. When they're finely and beautifully done like they are on kits like this, I don't mind it at all. It's when they're heavy-handed that it really gets to me. I digressed again, I apologise. So this is sprue T. Again, we've got two of those packed together in that one bag. This one, as you can see, has the nose of the float on it. This is the end of the tail of the fuselage, the underside of the front of the float. Try saying that when you're drunk. And parts for a beaching trolley, which is a nice addition, because if without a beaching trolley, displaying these models is a case of them either lying drunkenly askew, or you have to build some kind of stand for yourself. So it's nice that the trolley is included. We also have some interior detail parts and a propeller, and again, the moulding is virtually flawless and the detail is quite lovely. Very, very nice. Put those to the side, and then the final bag. So there are 3 packets of grey parts, and it looks like There are 2 more sprues in here. So there's quite a lot of parts here for a 48th World War II fighter. So we have 2 each of 2 different sprues again. This one being sprue D. And I'm going to assume, yes, I can see undercarriage parts. This is from the original Zero kit again. Fuselage floor, wheel well parts that we clearly aren't going to use. Engine parts, instrument panels. It's all here. And again, I'm going to sound, I'm sorry sounding like a broken record, but really, really beautifully done. Lots of detail, but not too much, so it gives them room to improve for their brassing parts. Obviously, I'm going to be controversial again. When the 48 Spitfire 9 came out, I reasoned that, to be honest, I felt that Eduard hadn't done the best they could possibly do with the plastic parts. And I felt that they had done that in order to give themselves an excuse to produce all the brassing, or give themselves somewhere to go with the brassing, because I genuinely believe that Eduard are one of those companies that if they put their mind to it, or if they choose to, they can produce a plastic kit that really doesn't need aftermarket. But in doing so, they steal a share of their own portion of that market. So I somewhat cynically reasoned that that they deliberately under-engineer their kits to a degree to allow that brassing to have a bit of headroom, if you like. This one seems less so, but I could still see simplification where it needn't necessarily be there. And in fairness, there are so many modelers who'll buy that brass and stuff regardless of whether the kit needs it, because modelers just like doing that. Again, just beautifully done. You have an instrument panel here with no detail on it. This will allow for easy application of a decal or photo etch, and you have one with some detail but not a lot, which again you could put a decal over that, but you would have to smooth it off if you wanted to fit photo etch. Engines, these are the parts. I think, yes, they are slightly, those cylinders are slightly simplified really. I'm quite sure that the brassing resin engine would be a marked improvement on that. Cockpit floor there, and the bulkhead, various engine parts and side console parts, and here's these 2 instrument panels. I do see some flash on these guns. See around the end of the gun there, it's a fair bit of sort of flash going on there, not the best. Alright, and the final pair, come on camera, thank you. The final pair of sprues are here. These are sprue U, 2 of, and fairly obviously here we have the rest of the floats. There are also a couple of tiny bombs, some propeller spinners and a few smaller detailed parts. I don't know if those are bomb racks, but it's part of the sort of air intake system that sits in the pylon for the float. It's just got that lovely big monopod thing going on. It's presumably a wing spar to use in lieu of that undercarriage bay part that we won't be using for this version. And yet again, the same attention to detail. We've got raised panels on this float, recessed panel lines, and then these rivet details. It is truly beautifully done. So the final call for plastic parts is the transparencies. Here they are. 2 separate bags, which is nice. I don't have any rattly bits in either of these. They are identical, so I'll just get one out. I can see evidence of sort of where these have been pressed and smashed around a little bit in the box, because that box is potentially a little bit too big. It allows everything to rattle around in transit, so we'll see if that's done any damage to anything. It actually hasn't, because these sort of sprue posts are higher than the transparency, so they're all absolutely perfectly fine. And now we have navigation lights aplenty. Gun sights on the top there, I think 1, 2, 3 different sorts. Don't know if this is a piece of internal transparent armour. I'm certainly not an expert on these things. And then a selection of cowling parts. So I'm going to assume that this allows for canopies to be open or closed. Got the centre part here, windscreens here, and the rear part there. I'm not sure what this part is, but obviously we'll look at the instructions shortly. And as you have to expect, these are totally up to the standard that you would think Eduard would give you. There is a slight lack of clarity on some of them, which I think is caused by the moulds not being perfectly smooth, but a little distortion in this windscreen in particular. But genuinely, by the time they're installed on the kit and all the frames are painted and everything around it is painted, it's not going to be noticeable. I doubt I can even get the camera to show it really. You can see. Nice and glossy. The framings are raised, but not ridiculously so. Just nice. And they have sort of fastener detail moulded in. I'd say there's 2 of those. Right. Put everything back in the bags and pause proceedings. Wait one. Alright. That's all the plastic looked at. So next up we've got, as befits a Profi Pack offering, some photo etch and some masks. And this is Eduard's now standard pre-cut Tamiya style tape mask set, which is the windows, got all the windows there. In fact, I'm questioning whether they're inner and outer because there's 2 sets there. Oh, it's 2 sets, 2 models. Yeah, fair one. And a load of circles, which initially I took to be national markings, but in fact I believe those are for the wheels on the beaching trolley. So there you go, standard pre-cut stuff there. Beaching trolleys, I should say, is 1 for each model. Just faff around and put these back in the bag extra slowly. Then the photo etch, again, 2 sets, 1 for each model, and again pretty much what you would expect. It's essentially covering cockpit edition here. I see we've got an oil cooler screen there, harnesses, instrument panels and console parts, and then a few smaller parts for things like throttle levers and what have you, but I'll bring it up close for you. And this is where the camera has a paddy because of the contrast, but not much I can do about that. So these are the sandwich type, pre-coloured with the dials, and I don't know if you could really see from there, but the dials are pre-glossed. You see they've got that little dome of shiny on them, and it's not sticky at all. It's a nicely glossy finish, so you don't even have to drip PVA into the dials anymore with these. They're literally a one-stop shop for excellent instrument panels. So there are 2 pieces of etch, and then before we look at the instructions, the decals. Dare I say, the now infamous Eduard decals. There are a lot of people out there now really adamant that they don't like these things, and in fairness to those people, it's not actually because of the whole peelable carrier film thing. It's because of the quality, or the lack thereof, of the printing. So let's see what we've got with this one. Yeah. It's actually a fairly good example of what is being said. Now, if you look at these national markings, do you know what? I don't think that's really coming through on video. They're quite washed out, the colour. It's not a deep rich red, is it? It's sort of it's very orangey. But I don't know if you can see. It's quite speckly in appearance, a little bit dotty. I don't know if that's coming through. I can certainly see it. And all of them, these yellow, sort of orangey yellow scripts are particularly bad. They're kind of, it's like a poor resolution on a printer or a scanner almost. Just a bit dotty. Now, the whites are pretty good. The blue is a bit washed out again. You can see it's sort of faded looking in the middle. It's almost got a darker blue along the edge. Stripes wise, I don't care. I wouldn't use them anyway. I'll generally always spray those by preference because it really isn't difficult to mask a stripe. National markings in this case also incredibly easy to make a mask and do it yourself. Overall, I would say these are broadly speaking usable for my purposes because this slightly washed out appearance isn't necessarily a bad thing depending on the subject. We've also got up the top corner a load of instrument panel dial decals. Then 2 separate sheets of stencils only. And the red on these is somewhat brighter actually. These are alright. And as I say, that's the issue. It's not the peelableness or otherwise of the carrier film. You do not have to peel the carrier film off these. It's beautifully tapered and incredibly thin at the edges. If I get those in the light, hopefully you can see what I'm on about. The edges of those decals almost disappear even while they're on the carrier sheet. So if you apply it as is with all of the decal film, use your normal solvents and what have you, get it fitted properly and then gloss it in. Give it a little tickle before you matte coat and matte coat it. They're pretty much going to disappear. The whites are a bit thick because they're white, so they're double layer, but look at where it's the N112 and those Hinamaru. The decal film's virtually invisible even before you get it off the sheet. So you do not have to peel them. I do, because you can. You don't have to, by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, some of it's peeling off already. Do you see that there? That's carrier film coming off before you even... So that's no good. Wouldn't be able to use that. But, you know, there's plenty of spare ones. So, yeah. The quality, I think these are okay. Some may disagree. But the issue is that variability. I have seen photographs of some sheets and they're so speckly it's ridiculous and they just don't look good at all. That was okay. Right, finally. Destructions. Now, I do love this box art. It's absolutely stunning. I don't know if it's really been said on the channel yet, a big fan of seaplanes, flying boats. I don't really know why, I just think they're cool. And I do have quite a few in the stash and I build them fairly regularly. In fact, I was the originator or the instigator of the Splash Special Interest Group for IPMS, who's still ongoing, that group, under new management now, being ably looked after by Grant, and I'm still a member. So I do love float planes, but equally Eduard have got an almost unique ability to peel money out of me by with their super alluring box art. It's sad but true. Somewhat standard Eduard instructions. It's shiny, it's A4 in format. Now, some may recall these dual combo limited editions, when they started to do them, used to have extras in them, much like the Royal class boxings. You'd get a few bits of resin or extra etch or something in there. One such boxing had a history book, or a couple of the boxings I've had sort of a history book included. This set has none of those things, but what it does have is a few pages of info on the Rufe, which I'll just hold that there, And I'll try and get it so that if you want to read this on the video you can. You'll just need to pause. Pause the video at the appropriate places and read through it. Four pages, a couple of photos. It's all historical information. Why the aircraft was built, who built it, how many were built, where it served, what it did. Quite interesting reading. With that done, I can try and remember how to turn the pages of a booklet. Here we go. Parts, layouts and what have you, with all the shaded parts not for use. So the ones I was querying on the transparencies are marked not for use anyway. That is an open and closed sliding portion, a rear and a front. The mask's included, as is the photo etch. Colour callouts are in either Mr. Hobby or Mr. Colour paints down here, and then annotated throughout the instructions. Now this, as with all Profi packs, is built around that photo etch, so it's all written down in here. Excuse me. To use it from the get-go, but there are optional decals. So it's saying cut off the raised detail here, apply the etch, but you could just put the decal on, totally up to you. Sometimes it's just a lot easier to put the decal on and you don't really lose that much in doing so. I think you might agree there are a lot of stages for this interior. There's a lot going on. You end up with a very Tamiya-esque little cockpit sub-assembly egg system there. Which slides in from underneath once you've joined the fuselage halves together. There's that wing spar being used in lieu of the wheel well. Wings go together nice and easy. And control surfaces added. Again, I don't seem to be able to operate a booklet. And then there was a problem because, as you can see, we're making tailplanes and adding a wing over here. Don't forget to add the nose weight balance. There's a little note from the Eduard bunny. What on earth, I hear you say? Well, it's because it's a float plane, and if you don't put nose weight in the front of that float, the model will tip up even when it's on the stand. So don't forget to add nose weight, but helpfully it doesn't tell you how much to add. And then there's a problem. So we've nearly built it here, and yet here we're back at the front of the book. And it's really confused me initially. I'm pleased to say I figured it out in the end. That this page here it's a repeat page, and what's happened is instead of having the page that has 13 and 14 on it, I've got another 7, 8, 21, 22. So oopsie daisy. And it, I thought initially it was in the wrong order, but I'm actually just flat out missing a page. So I'll go on the website. I think the instructions are reproduced on there, but if not, I'll just contact Eduard for a set PDF or something. So yeah, I'm missing the construction and addition of all the floats basically. Oh well. Here's how you fit the masks. There are a lot of windows. They are all kind of square and similar looking, but ultimately they're laid out on the mask film in the same order that they are on the windows, so if you work logically around it, you'll be fine. As I said, the circles are for the wheels on the trolley, and you've got Avlight ones too, which is a nice touch. And then we're on to colour schemes now. Colour schemes for this thing are kind of basic. There weren't that many built, around 250, and the colour schemes were either grey or green over grey. Some were field applied green over grey because they all left the factory in grey, and then there was an order that they should get painted green on the top. Some were, some weren't, some were done neatly, some were not done neatly. and of course you've got the vagaries of various different shades of green that different places had to hand. And later on in production they came out of the factory in that green over grey scheme. So this first one is from the Yokohama Kokutai in the Solomons. As with all of these now, there's a nice bit of history telling you about the aircraft who flew it and what they got up to. This one, 5th Kokutai from the Aleutians in 42, same scheme. There's a note here, I don't see it on this particular one, but there's a note about how the fabric covered control surfaces often had a slightly lighter hue, which is why that's drawn like that. Third one, Keizo Yamazaki Kokutai, Shortland Island, February 1943. So that one's got the blue rings. Then Kokutai 802, same squadron. Not if they're called squadrons in the Japanese Navy, but this one's got the field applied green overpaint. Quite like this one. Kokutai 452, another one with the overpainted uppers. So this is the one that needs the yellow serials. I've got a feeling those decals wouldn't look too great over green, to be honest. Then Marshall Islands Kokutai 802. I think this is probably a factory finished green over grey. They've all got this intriguing sort of shadow shading thing going on the float as well. Adds a little bit of interest and a little bit of hassle to paint. Next up, this is a named guy from Sasebo Air Base, September 1944. This one has a lightning bolt. Late production, factory applied dark green. Kokutai 934, Ambon Island from Maluku Islands, March 44. This one scored a victory over a Spitfire with a roof. Who'd have thought? Actually, if you read the stuff in the instructions, the performance of the roof was really quite good. It clearly wasn't on a par with equivalent land-based fighters due to the extra weight and drag of the floats, but considering that, it was actually pretty decent. This is your stencil layout plan on the back. And that, dear friends, is it. The Eduard Rufe limited edition dual combo set. I really rather like it. I really hope you guys do too. As I said earlier, I haven't seen the Zero kit that this is based on. I don't think this isn't a Zero sprue. Looking at it, it actually says A6M2N on here, because I think this panelling around the midsection is extra for the seaplane. Obviously the wing sprues are different as well, so I think it's really sort of only the detail and interior sprue that remains the same. So it's quite impressive that they've gone to the effort of releasing it, because I can't honestly imagine that the figures of the amount of modellers that desperately want to build a roof are going to be that high compared to those that are going to want to build a Zero. I don't know, I personally would rather build a roof than a Zero, but I realise I'm not everyone. Anyway, waffle. 59.98, 60 quid basically for 2 Profi Pack roofs. I think it's very acceptable value for money. I don't think it's a bargain particularly, but it's I don't think it's over the top either. I'm quite happy with it. As I said, this one came from modelsforsale.com. I think he does still have a couple left, but they're dwindling rapidly. And yeah, bearing in mind that sort of tool wear thing I'm seeing on Eduard kits, I think if people are really interested in these kits, they should probably jump on them when they come out and suck up that initial price, really. But that's just me. I don't know. Your mileage may vary. So there you go. Eduard Rufe. It's another blinding set from Eduard. I do love their stuff. Love the box art, love the presentation, love the way they go about their business, and I think this kit looks fabulous. I don't doubt that it'll be a pretty much trouble-free build as well. So I do recommend it. As always, if you like what I do and you wish to directly support me, you can do so with the Buy Me a Coffee app. The link will be down below for that. Certainly isn't obligatory, though. I don't feel like you have to. And with that said, it only remains for me to say, look after yourselves, look after each other, and Genesis out.